Barbed wire fences around the Capitol, troops in Washington, D.C., suppression of free speech. Is this the normalcy that we were promised in a post-Trump America? Friends, it's time for Hold the Line. Welcome to Hold the Line. I'm Buck Sexton. It has been a couple of weeks now since Joe Biden was inaugurated as America's 46th president. Biden has ushered into the White House a promise of unity and normalcy. Well, I think we're starting to get a picture of what that normalcy might actually look like. You got fences around the Capitol here, barbed wire surrounding the actual Capitol building right there. You still have thousands of National Guardsmen occupying Washington, D.C., and increasingly there are public calls for law enforcement to be used against the American right. A piece published this week in the normally conservative Washington Examiner calls for Americans to be treated like foreign terrorists, specifically like Al-Qaeda. In the op-ed, former Homeland Security official Kevin Carroll suggests a number of steps, including increased FBI sting operations against American citizens on social media, the banning of so-called militias, and forcing cops and firefighters to sign loyalty oaths to the federal government. Carroll concludes by saying, quote, "We defeated Al-Qaeda and can do the same to the fascist thugs who attacked our democracy last month, but only if we take similar hard measures against the enemy within." Ah, yes, the enemy within. We've been hearing a lot about that in recent days, language that's becoming commonplace among Democrats. Here's Nancy Pelosi just last week calling for an increased security budget for the Capitol itself.
I do believe, and I have said this all along, that we will probably need a supplemental for more security for members when the enemy is within the House of Representatives.
She's calling out fellow members of Congress there. That's what that's all about. You can't think that this is just rhetoric because Democrats are already acting on it. In fact, what we see going on right now in D.C. with the continued militarization of security around the Capitol, it's as if they didn't already have a lot of federal and local police forces there. They don't have enough guys and gals with guns. They need the National Guard to stay because of the imminent threat of a Trump coup at any moment. This is insane. This is hysteria. It's not rooted in any reality, but we continue to have to live through it anyway. As I said, this is not just what they're claiming publicly. This is what they're doing now. And let's take a step back for a second here. Remember what it was like after Trump won. There was no effort to purge Democrats, to kick them out of the public square, to mobilize counterterrorism forces against the defeated Hillary Clinton supporters. But now the Democrats have control of the presidency. They have a majority in the House, and they have a de facto majority in the Senate with the tie-breaking vote of Kamala Harris. So they have unified control of the elected branches of government. And instead of trying to bring us together, we know unity didn't last very long. But now another casualty of reality is normalcy. Vote for Joe Biden and everything will go back to normal. Well, not in terms of the lockdowns, not actually going to be able to beat the COVID pandemic quickly. There was no magic strategy for vaccinations. No, that was all just campaign rhetoric, you could say, lies. So we've seen that play out. And now we're also seeing that instead of unifying or even normalizing the country around an agenda of prosperity and just going back to our day-to-day lives the way we're used to it, Democrats are fixated on punishing and, if possible, destroying, crushing their political rivals. That's why you have these absurd editorials being written and also night after night people on major news channels talking about counterterrorism operations against Trump supporters. They use words like insurrection to describe what was, yes, a riot and wrong, but was it really going to topple the United States government? Because that's the claim that's constantly made. Is that true? Clearly it's not. So why do they go beyond what the facts actually tell us? Because there's power at stake here. And they know that if they can frighten their political opponents by using certain terms and using the apparatus of the government to suppress them, that helps them. They realize what the advantages are. Over at CNN, Mr. Fake Tapper himself, he loves to use the term, MAGA terrorist.
So how did these domestic terrorists storm the nation's capital? The Capitol ransacked by MAGA terrorists. The assault perpetrated by the MAGA terrorists. The MAGA terrorists. Deadly attack by MAGA terrorists. The MAGA terrorist mob. A terrorist attack on the U.S. Capitol. Far-right domestic terrorism, a huge problem in this country. Nobody supports terrorist attacks, or I used to think that anyway, but nobody rational supports terrorist attacks. Should there be repercussions for your colleagues who played a role in inciting this terrorist attack? You can't have presidents of the United States inciting terrorist attacks on the Capitol. Incited a terrorist mob.
That's pure propaganda meant to go after you, meant to go after the political opposition. He's talking about the guilt that other members of the Congress have for this, as if somehow they're all responsible for it. Was this the standard that was applied to Black Lives Matter over the summer, when there were riots all across the country, when police officers were murdered, including sitting in their cars just by themselves doing nothing? Was that the standard? Were we hearing about how BLM is a domestic terrorist organization? No, we were not, despite the violence, the riots, day in and day out. Let's not allow this gaslighting to continue without at least some pushback, my friends. We know what they're doing right now. They're creating a storyline. They're pushing a narrative that somehow all the political violence is on the right, when actually violence on the right is an aberrant event. And on the left, it's entirely normalized, or at least it was last year. Yeah, so what? There's some mostly peaceful protests going on. They want to burn down a few federal buildings. No big deal. They have an important cause, don't you see? That cops are all racist and that are murdering minorities for no good reason. That's the story. Also a lie, by the way, but that's what they say. But at CNN, it's just all about gouging their enemies, politically speaking, in the eyes. Whatever they can throw at them, that's what they'll do. And this is true of the entirety of the Democrat apparatus now, the Democrat elites. They want payback for Trumpism. It's not enough that Trump lost and Joe Biden's in power now. Now they want to go around and bayonet the survivors, so to speak. They want to take this out on everybody, not just the people who committed criminal acts that day on Capitol Hill as part of the riot. It's not an insurrection. But anybody that supported Trump, anybody that was an outspoken defender of the MAGA agenda. Oh, you mean the MAGA terrorist agenda? You can just see how they conflate all these things together. This is not an accident. This is a strategy. They're doing it for a reason. And at a time when we've already seen our civil liberties, our basic freedoms, curtailed in unimaginable ways. The greatest threat to freedom in my lifetime has occurred in the last 12 months as a result of policies that Democrats overwhelmingly demand with the COVID lockdowns. And now we're seeing that they also want to cut you off from internet access if you say the wrong thing. The public square is no longer a place where you could share your opinions. Maybe your business should no longer be able to advertise on Google. Maybe you should be kicked off of other platforms. You no longer exist. This is what they're doing to you, and it's all part of a plan. This is not accidental. It's going to keep happening until we decide we're going to stand up and say enough. All right, up next, my friend Henry Rodgers, the senior correspondent on Capitol Hill for the Daily Caller, is going to join us and tell us about what's actually going on down in D.C. Stick around. Have you ever wanted to invest in real estate, but you didn't have the time to do it on your own? I felt exactly the same way as you until about a year ago. I've always loved the idea of real estate investments, but I didn't know how to invest in real estate while staying committed to my profession. I'm doing hours and hours of original content every day. I'm sure you're really busy too, so how are we ever going to take the time on our own to invest in real estate and figure this stuff out? Well, then I met my friends at Done For You Real Estate. They took all of the guesswork out of it for me. They found me an awesome property. They rented it out for me right away. They managed the tenant for me, and now I get a check every month like clockwork. Don't wait another second to see if my buddies at Done For You Real Estate can do for you what they did for me. Visit doneforyoubuck.com to see how it works today. That's right, doneforyoubuck.com. They'll take you step by step through the same real estate investment journey that I've been through and am having so much success with so far. Go to doneforyoubuck.com today and start your own real estate investment journey. Remember just last month when tens of thousands of National Guard troops flooded the streets of Washington, D.C.? We were told they were there to protect the Capitol from the right-wing assault that was going to happen any minute, right? It's going to unfold right on Inauguration Day. Newsflash, as you already know, that didn't actually happen. There were no riots. There was no violence. There were some socially distanced cheers from masked members of government. That's what happened on Inauguration Day. And yet D.C. still looks like a militarized war zone. U.S. soldiers from 23 different states are stationed in our capital and plan on staying there till at least mid-March. So what's the real reason why these troops are occupying D.C.? And why isn't the media covering it? Here to weigh in is senior congressional correspondent at the Daily Caller, Henry Rodgers. My friend Henry, good to see you.
Hey, Buck. Thanks for having me, man.
First, let's just start
Appreciate
with, how's it looking on the streets of D.C. these days? I remember talking to friends a few weeks ago, and they were saying you had to provide proof to be able to get to your own building in the neighborhood if you lived in downtown because of the lockdown by the National Guard, all because of MAGA threats.
That is absolutely correct, Buck. I mean, I live downtown. My building was occupied basically by the Secret Service. Outside, it was a checkpoint. I had to show my lease in order to get onto my street. And then in order to get in my building, show my lease again and be able to scan my key fob. So that was just like a day of, or a week of chaos there. The thing is it never really ended. So I work in the Capitol, as you know, and there's these massive fences they installed before, like you were just speaking about, with razor wire and all of this National Guard, hundreds of, if not thousands of National Guards still sitting around. And that's even a problem, getting an Uber to the Capitol. Nowadays you have to walk several blocks in order to even to see the nation's capital up close. So, I originally sent out a tweet after this happened. I was like, so surely after Biden's inaugurated, all of this stuff will be taken down, right? Because this was all set up for the vicious riots that we were expecting throughout the Capitol. That never happened. But they're still up, Buck, and I don't think there's any plans for them to come down anytime soon.
And we see that there are some out there, like the governor, this was from last week, Governor Pritzker, said that he's activating 500 National Guard members, this is from out in Illinois, for a security mission in D.C. until mid-March. And he wrote, "We must root out the dark forces of racism, white supremacy, and disinformation that have created this moment. But until we do that, our extraordinary National Guard troops will deploy with honor." Disinformation? Now the National Guard gets deployed to our nation's capital to combat what? Mean memes? What are they doing?
It really beats me, Buck. I haven't seen anything like this in my lifetime. I've lived here for my entire life. So that's quite a while now. And I've lived here for my entire life. Never seen anything like this. I don't think anyone I know has. If you walk into the United States Capitol, there are hundreds of National Guards and just laying on the floors of the Capitol still, walking around, getting Capitol tours right now, broad day. Nothing going on, nothing to be seen, no chaos. So compare that to what I was covering this summer with BLM riots going all throughout the streets, all throughout the White House, a church being set on fire right next to my apartment building. This is stuff that the National Guard should have been here for, and they should have been armed.
This was from Inauguration Week. We're showing people, again, this is now from a couple of weeks ago, but that's what the scene was there of people of National Guard members camped out in the actual Capitol, as we know, later sent to the garage where they had no bathroom access really or electricity or anything else, because that's how much Democrats really care about the National Guard. But I also want to ask, what can you tell us about the current state of a financial rescue package? We've been hearing about this.
Yeah.
There are supposed to be checks. Biden said, we're going to get the $2,000 checks. Now maybe it's $1,400 or it's another number. Where does that negotiation stand? I'm seeing all the stuff from Biden about the executive orders, but Congress, you're the congressional correspondent for the Caller. Are they actually going to do their job and get some money to people that are suffering because of all the lockdowns?
Well, I remember Joe Biden said after they won Georgia, after they won the Senate seats in Georgia, he said, hey, listen, if you vote for Democrats and if we win these 2 seats in Georgia, you will 100% be getting your $2,000 stimulus checks. Well, we are several weeks in, if not almost a month into the administration now, and that's completely flopped. Republicans were over there yesterday, for almost just a stunt meeting. Obviously, there was nothing that was going to come out of it. Jen Psaki, the press secretary, said so beforehand, that there was nothing going to be coming out of it. So right now, they're focused on impeachment. Impeachment starts next week. They're going to impeach the guy who's no longer president, and that's where all their focus seems to be lying right now, not on the American people who need the stimulus money very badly.
And you mentioned Jen Psaki and the Psaki bombs that are being dropped on a daily basis. The Biden White House has come under, look, this is one of these, it doesn't really matter, but I think it's a little bit indicative of just how full of it the whole Biden team of of good government geniuses that are all running things now. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
They've come
right.
under fire because there's a claim out there, I believe, from Jed Palmieri over at ABC News that there's some screening of White House press briefing questions going on beforehand. Here we have, our goal is to make the daily briefing as useful as possible. This is from the White House. Part of the meeting, that objective means regularly engaging with reporters, yada, yada, important part, blah, blah. Basically saying, this is a boilerplate nonsense statement to Fox News they put out. But can you tell us, what are you hearing from I know you're friends with some of the White House correspondents. I mean, is Jen Psaki trying to get word about what the questions are going to be before? I mean, the questions are all gentle except from Fox News anyway.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything personally, Buck, but I will tell you the Daily Beast put out a story basically saying the exact same thing with 3 sources on the record. And they're pretty friendly with a lot of the media in the White House, saying that they were being screened for questions. Jen Psaki was essentially asking them, or other staffers in the press team were asking them what they were thinking about question-wise in these briefings. And I think that's just absolutely wild. I mean, Buck, I think this is crazy because if Donald Trump were to have done this, if Kayleigh McEnany were to have done this, can you imagine the attack on the free press, all the crap we would have been hearing right now? But, not one reporter today in the press briefing room even asked the White House about these allegations. You would think someone would ask about them because I think they deserve to be asked about. If the White House press secretary is screening reporters' questions before they're asked, that's insane. I mean, the press access we already know is going to be very limited in this administration. It's going to look a lot like the Obama administration, I fear, if not worse. But the Trump administration had the most access, and yet reporters complain the most. We'll see how it turns out in a couple months here with that one.
To borrow from Psaki Bomb, Henry, you can circle back with us when you have more answers.
Yeah, exactly.
Anytime you don't have an answer, my friend, just tell us you'll circle back, and there we go. We're good to go. Henry Rodgers, the Daily Caller. My man, hold down the fort down in D.C., all right? Don't let it get too crazy. Good to see you.
I'll try. You too, man. I'll try.
Could the media's love affair with Andrew Cuomo finally be coming to an end? It's certainly starting to look like that's a possibility. We'll take a closer look at the falling out of the libs with their favorite governor in tonight's Buck Brief. You never thought COVID could cost you your home, right? It just might, because cybercrime is up 75%, and by far the most serious cybercrime to worry about when it comes to your home is home title theft. That's right, cyber criminals, foreign and domestic, are now after our homes, and it's easier than you'd think. The title documents to our homes are online now. The thief finds your home's title and forges your signature on a quitclaim deed stating you sold your home to him. Then he takes out loans on your home and leaves you in debt. You won't know until late payments or eviction notices arrive. Insurance doesn't cover you, and neither do common identity theft programs. That's why I protect my home with Home Title Lock. The instant Home Title Lock detects someone tampering with my home's title, they help shut it down. Just go to HomeTitleLock.com and register your address there to see if you're already a victim of this crime and you don't even know it yet. You can also use code RADIO to receive 30 free days of protection. That's code RADIO at HomeTitleLock.com. Again, HomeTitleLock.com. Governor Cuomo, or is it King Cuomo? Oh no, I'm sorry, Emperor Cuomo. At least those are the titles that New York's Andrew Cuomo might give to himself if he had a choice. As we all know, his ego is larger than the entire Empire State, and he never misses an opportunity to self-aggrandize. One title he seems less likely to ever have after this week is President Cuomo. That may come as a relief to many, it should, including the families of more than the estimated 12,000 New Yorkers who lost loved ones in nursing homes. Yes, the days of many thinking Cuomo is a competent, folksy but tough governor are gone. After the damning report by Democrat New York Attorney General Letitia James exposing Cuomo's incompetence and subsequent cover-up in the nursing home scandal, seems we're witnessing what might be the last days of Cuomo stardom. You see, Cuomo is no longer useful to the establishment or the media the same way he was to bash Trump. Trump's gone. So now Cuomo is really a giant liability for them. He has served his purpose. Besides Democrat attorney generals, even the New York Times is going after him. We'll examine the recent fall of Cuomo on today's Buck Brief. New York Times, writing, I think, in part because there are a whole bunch of folks right now who recognize that Cuomo's record on COVID is going to become increasingly indefensible based on the numbers. You just look at the data and you will come to the conclusion that this guy did a horrible job. You can't think that he actually knew what he was doing. This was awful. But that's the truth. And then there's also the possibility that the New York State Attorney General, Letitia James, perhaps would be a fantastic, as far as the Democrats are concerned, replacement for Governor Cuomo and an end to the Cuomo political dynasty in the Empire State. Here's what the New York Times wrote, that 9 top health officials have quit as Cuomo scorns expertise. When I say experts in air quotes, it sounds like I'm saying I don't really trust the experts Governor Cuomo said of pandemic policies, because I don't. Now, let me share that, in a sense, he's right. I know that's taking in probably a different direction than most people who are criticizing this. In a sense, what he's saying is true. I mean, how many times have I criticized, for example, Dr. Fauci for being somebody who is a mess when it comes to bad predictions, bad policies? So there are certainly experts out there whom we should not be deferring to. There are people out there that we shouldn't be saying, you know what, whatever they say must be true. But Cuomo's one of the guys who's telling us, oh no, you have to listen because the science. You have to listen because these people are smarter than you, and I'm listening to the smart people. That's what Governor Cuomo was telling everybody else here. And then we find out that no, actually, he's kind of freelancing, doing it his own way. I'm sure when we dig into this more, you'll find out the same thing about other states. What were the experts around Gavin Newsom telling him at different times? I'm sure they weren't telling him, hey, go to a big indoor dining session at French Laundry right after you shut down dining for everybody else. Have a blast. Don't even get me started on Governor Whitmer of Michigan. We're going to find out that she was also a nightmare on this issue. Just give it time. Joe Borelli is a New York City councilman, and he's had Cuomo's number on all this for quite some time. Here's what he says.
Yeah, Joe, I mean, what you just heard is a blatant lie by Andrew Cuomo. I mean, we know that to be not true and not the case. The order was given by him, was given by no one else but him and his health department. And I got to give a little credit to Democrat Tish James for actually trying to get answers for some grieving family. The country's finally seeing that this is not the Emmy Award-winning cool dude in a loose mood. This is a guy who's a self-aggrandizing bully. He was born on third, thinks he hit a triple, and now America can finally see in plain terms that this guy is an absolute disaster, and the best thing Joe Biden has done as president so far is keep him out of his administration.
There you have it from our friend Joe Borelli, who'll be joining us, I think, pretty soon this week to talk more about this issue. You've also even got Jake, technically his name is not Fake Tapper, Jake Tapper out there pointing out that this is not a smart thing for, even Democrats believe it's not a smart thing for Governor Cuomo to say, wildly irresponsible, referring to this. We have his tweet up there. But I want to remind everybody, there you go, wildly irresponsible, right? Because you have to believe the experts, even though there are experts who disagree on all major matters of COVID lockdown policy and mitigation measures. And, you know, there's the Great Barrington Declaration, which we pretend doesn't even exist, that has thousands and thousands of doctors and scientists who have said that our basically entire approach to this thing has been wrong-headed. But anyway, they aren't experts because the media doesn't agree with them. You know who the media did agree with, though? They absolutely loved Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York. At earlier times, this is how they were describing a guy who, before we let you hear what they were saying, and until very recently, this was their attitude about him. Remember that Cuomo has the second worst per capita death rate from COVID-19 of any governor in the entire country. The second worst, after only New Jersey. And also, his order about nursing homes may have been the single most egregiously stupid and reckless decision made by any politician, leading to the most amount of unnecessary or excess deaths during the pandemic. This is how the media used to talk about this guy.
David, we're standing by for Governor Cuomo's press conference, his daily briefing. How would you contrast Cuomo and President Trump's handling of the crisis?
Truth versus mendacity.
Governor Cuomo out there day after day after day, everything Trump isn't, honest, direct, brave.
Real leadership of the kind the President of the United States should have provided.
Governor Cuomo is clearly living in a totally different reality, the actual one, than the president of the United States.
Governor Cuomo has become a national leader.
For a lot of people, Andrew Cuomo has become the leader of the Democratic Party.
He is conveying incredible strength.
You spoke to National Guard troops today in a stirring speech that, if I wasn't listening carefully, I thought you were sending soldiers off to war.
A leader, a hero, the leader of the Democrat Party, even. That's what they were saying. That's right. The worst COVID response, the worst COVID results of any politician in the country. So that's just a fact. That's where we are. But the Democrats thought he was great because what was he doing? Attacking Trump. As long as he was willing to attack Trump and be useful in that, they created an entire alternate reality where Cuomo was doing a great job because he was holding press conferences. And I'll note that at first he wasn't attacking Trump because he wanted the hospital ships to show up and he wanted the PPE and he wanted all this federal government assistance, which he got. And then he turned around and trashed the president for the amusement of Democrats in an election year to help doddering old fool Joe Biden actually get elected. And if you're wondering about Cuomo's judgment in general, you know, we had a huge snowstorm in New York yesterday. And whenever there's a lot of snow in the in the Northeast from D.C. up to Boston, the news media freezes in place, no pun intended. And that's the most important thing anybody can think about. Cuomo was telling people to stay off the roads during the snowstorm and then randomly decided that it was time to drive to New York City. And no one even really knew why. So you have to stay off the roads. He had to drive to New York. Not at least on his official schedule. No one even knew what this was all about. Rules for you, not for him. Classic Democrat in that sense. So maybe he is kind of the leader of his party, because to be a Democrat today, you have to embrace a lot of authoritarianism and a lot of hypocrisy. Cuomo is the poster child for that. He's the guy. And at least now people are starting to wake up and see him for what he really is. The Biden administration and Senate Republicans are still working to reach an agreement on a COVID relief package. We've got the latest with former Maryland congressional candidate and conservative commentator Kim Klacik when we come back. Last night, 10 Republican senators walked away from a meeting with President Biden without reaching an agreement on coronavirus relief.
It was a very good exchange of views. I wouldn't say that we came together on a package tonight. No one expected that in a 2-hour meeting. But what we did agree to do is to follow up and talk further.
Big differences on a stimulus package remain, starting with the price tag. Republicans are offering $618 billion to Biden's $1.9 trillion. Yes, with a T. This after the government has already spent $6 trillion on COVID relief. But don't expect the Biden administration to wait around. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki released this statement saying, quote, "The president expressed his hope that the group could continue to discuss ways to strengthen the American Rescue Plan as it moves forward. He reiterated, however, he will not slow down work on this urgent crisis response and will not settle for a package that fails to meet the moment." Yeah. So why are Dems focusing on ramming through another round of stimulus checks instead of reopening the country? Or at least, what is the strategy at work here? Let's get into it. We're joined now by Kimberly Klacik. She is a former Maryland congressional candidate and a political commentator. Kim, great to see you again.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
So we got the GOP worried here that the COVID relief plan is loaded with a whole lot. I mean, everyone's expecting this, right, Kim? We got non-COVID related items, $350 billion to state and local governments, a $15 minimum wage. I mean, that's not a COVID thing. Larger Obamacare premium tax credit and other things I'm sure they'll try to ram in here at the last second. How do you see this playing out? I mean, is the GOP going to just have to go along with the massive spending package and take it?
I hope not, but as you and I both know, we didn't do enough to save the Senate last time around, especially as we were trying to do that in Georgia. But, you know, for Representative Collins to walk out, or Senator Collins, to walk out and say that they didn't expect to make a deal in 2 hours, I would expect them to make a deal in 2 hours. This is an atrocious amount of money that they're looking to spend, trillions of dollars. We are straying further away from ever talking about having a balanced budget. But as we know, that this money never ends up in the hands of the American people, right? Everyone else seems to get money, but it's never targeted to families and small businesses. Now they're talking about raising the minimum wage, but for some people, the economy still isn't opening. So what are we talking about jobs for as we still have businesses closed? I don't know. But again, this is what Democrats do. You know, they love to push a bunch of money down our throats. They don't really resolve the issues, and it just compounds the issues. So they come back and ask for more taxpayer dollars.
I mean, Kim, I know this is one of the reasons why you wanted to go into Congress, and you may still yet go into elected office. But when you look around, it just seems like the elected officials who have the majority now, these Democrats, they just don't have any sense of urgency. I mean, people's businesses are going under. People are running up debts they're worried they'll never be able to pay. There's a lot of economic pain out there. And there's just, it seems to me like a lot of dithering going on from people who want to make sure they can fit all their pet issues into this massive spending package. And we're not even dealing really with the fact that, as you point out, I mean, the spending is, we're going to be at $30 trillion of debt here before anybody can blink an eyelash. And that's kind of terrifying for those of us that think that fiat currency has a history that doesn't go well.
Yeah, you know, it's a shame. And, you know, the thing about this that really bothers me, Buck, is the fact that the people making the decision, they've never missed a paycheck, right? So for the past year, they have been getting paid by taxpayer dollars. And a lot of us out here are hurting. You know, just in Baltimore City, we had restaurants come together and support each other, doing a GoFundMe, helping each other keep their doors open as we went through a lockdown that seemed to last forever and much longer than many counties surrounding Baltimore City. So I don't know why they're making these decisions. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of hope that we'll be talking about a balanced budget soon. But Joe Biden, like you said, they're not moving with any sense of urgency. It's almost as if they have no idea how much people are suffering. And then for him to turn around and revoke the permits on the Keystone Pipeline, you know, nixing 11,000 jobs, is just hurtful, and I can't believe that we're doing this right now.
I mean, Kim, you tweeted out earlier today, if you're working on the Keystone Pipeline, can you just find another job? Okay. If you're a teacher afraid to teach in person because of COVID, you too can just find another job, pointing out that some jobs are not important at all to Democrats. They're totally disposable for political reasons. And other jobs for political reasons are protected even when people are unwilling to do them, as we see, particularly in the case of Chicago with the teachers' unions. But what do you make of the Biden administration really moving on these left-wing, particularly in the environment, but a whole range of issues, these left-wing agenda items, even at the expense of American jobs, as we see with Keystone XL?
Yeah, no, it's craziness right now. And I asked even on Twitter last night, how many people that support the Paris Agreement actually read it, right? It's only 26 pages long. It's not that big. But what it really is just a promissory note. And it's weird because we're spending all this money, yet America already meets the standards, right? We're not the ones doing all the polluting, yet we're going to pay into this. And then on top of it, we're trusting people that have stolen from us for decades, that have missiles pointed our way, that we shouldn't trust at all, right, if they meddle in our elections. But we're trusting that they will pollute less. It makes absolutely no sense. And yes, schools should be open. My daughter goes to private school. She's been in school since Labor Day. Everyone at their school has been fine. It's just a matter of the teachers union wanting to do their jobs. As we saw, Mayor Lori Lightfoot in Chicago said she spent $100 million to make sure that schools could open safely in Chicago, and they're still giving her pushback.
Kim, let me jump in there because you mentioned Mayor Lightfoot. We actually have her talking about this exact issue.
We are making some progress, and I thought it was in the interest of all that we announce a cooling off period, meaning the negotiations would continue intensely, but we would not take any disciplinary action against teachers who were refusing to report to their classrooms. This is a very difficult situation, and we're in it still because of the incompetence of the previous administration.
Nope. Not going to accept the it's Trump's fault nonsense when it comes to teachers' unions in Chicago going on what's effectively an illegal strike now by refusing to go into the office, violating their own collective bargaining agreement in the process. And now we're going to try to blame Trump. But as you pointed out, private schools are open in places. Your own child is in private school, and it's fine. Even Dr. Fauci says it should that schools should be reopened as soon as possible. So what are the teachers' unions doing?
I have no idea. And you know what's so interesting about this, Buck, is that our public school system, the per pupil spending in Baltimore City, they actually get double the amount per student than I pay for my child to go to Catholic school. So you know what? I hope parents are really paying attention and considering charter schools or private schools, because they're paying taxes into this public school education. And for them not to open when we see it's factual data. Look, other schools are open, kids are fine. For them to still push back makes absolutely no sense to me.
Kim, great to see you. Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much.
It's almost time for our rapid fire look at some of the stories that we still have to get to, and we will. That's Quick Hits up next. These days, being prepared for the unknown is more important than ever. I'm sure you've noticed the world we live in today is anything but predictable, and we could all benefit from something reliable right about now. Well, what could be more reliable than real gold and silver? I'm talking about real gold and silver you can actually hold right in your hands. Call the Oxford Gold Group now and learn how easy it is to get real gold and silver sent securely directly to your home, or how you can have real gold and silver placed in your IRA or 401k. Just call the Oxford Gold Group at 833-600-GOLD and ask for your free guide on owning gold and silver. Again, call the Oxford Gold Group right now at 833-600-GOLD. The Oxford Gold Group is the only gold company I trust. Call them right now at 833-600-GOLD. That's 833-600-GOLD. Don't wait for inflation to kick up, and don't wait for the stock market to have a serious downturn. Protect your wealth and your assets with gold. Check them out today. The Oxford Gold Group, 833-600-GOLD. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki gets a little snippy with conservative Twitter. And Chicago teachers, are they ever going to go back to teach in schools? Those stories in tonight's Quick Hits. Let's kick it off with Jen Psaki. And here's what she's saying. Well, let's let her say it.
And last thing I just want to do before we get to your questions, I often note I'm going to circle back. I hate to disappoint conservative Twitter, but I am going to circle back on a number of things, as we often do directly.
Oh, she doesn't like when the conservative Twitter makes fun of her. This reminds me of how there will always be these liberal commentators out there, people in the news media who go, people say the meanest things to me, and I've received death threats, which is horrible. And anyone who sends anyone a death threat that they don't know for any reason, or even really mean things to people they don't know, are losers and generally emotionally unstable and have really sad lives. But this happens to everyone I know in conservative media every day, myself included. This is not some badge of honor. So she's getting made fun of a little bit because it doesn't really seem like she's particularly good at this. I don't know why they chose Jen Psaki. I know some years ago she was the State Department spokesperson and was kind of mediocre at that. But, once you get known as being the person who can do a thing, all of a sudden the system just kicks in and you're doing the other thing that people know you for. So that's I think how we get to this with Psaki Bomb. And then she spoke on some substance. I know, because, we're nice here. I'm not trying to make fun of the lady. I know she's not doing a very good job, but we'll move past that. Let's get on to the substance of the ban of Trump and other conservatives, of course, on social media. White House Press Secretary spoke about that.
Does President Biden support the continuing ban of President Trump on their sites?
I think that's a decision made by Twitter. We've certainly spoken to, and he's spoken to, the need for social media platforms to continue to take steps to reduce hate speech, but we don't have more for you on it than that.
Reduce hate speech. Isn't that just such Orwellian, such slimy terminology that they're using here? Hate speech? Is that why Trump's... So now Trump's election claims are hate speech? You know what else they were saying was hate speech? They were trying to tell us that, this was remarkable, the Wall Street bets short squeeze trade that was going on a week ago, that, at least one social media platform said, that also was some form of hate speech. So now, just as we've always warned about censorship and the suppression of ideas happening in ways where people say they're not really doing that, and the left and the Democrats and journalists right now are all supportive of this. Just as we've been warning about that, we're seeing that happen in real time. And they don't tell you, oh, we're just going to shut down this idea because we don't like it or it makes us unhappy. They'll say, oh, it's hate speech. They'll expand the definition of hate speech to be whatever they don't like. But then they'll shoehorn it into this corner where, or into the shoe, I guess, where they'll say, well, that's under our ban on fill in the blank, even though it has nothing to do with that. That is what they're doing. And And this is a big problem for conservatives. I'll tell you that nobody was really prepared for this. There were some conservatives out there who were building their own platforms, as we know. There's the Parler app. There's Rumble as an alternative to YouTube. And the internet giants basically said, no, we're going to shut all of you down. And that continues to this day. And conservative media wasn't prepared for that. So now more than ever, for those of you watching this, finding voices, finding the commentary and content that you like directly is more important than ever. Because if you're relying on what's in your Facebook feed, you're going to get a lot of BS from MSNBC. That is the future in terms of social media platforms. They're not backing off of this at all. Their plan is to continue the crackdown, to continue the purge of ideas and thoughts that are disfavored by the left. And really, when you think about it from their perspective, why wouldn't they? They got more money than they'll ever need. They've got more control than anybody could ever imagine. And they want to do things the way they want to do it. Google, Facebook, YouTube's owned by Google. Same idea. Actually, Google's owned by Alphabet, the parent company, but who cares? These things are happening right now, and we haven't figured out a workaround. We haven't figured out a way through. We're just essentially retrenching, and we're just trying to catch our breath on the right and figure out how do we mount a worthwhile opposition to this. And the White House is all in on it. Jen Psaki, Biden, the whole crew, they love this. You mean that their opponents in politics are silenced? What could be better than that? I've given the teachers' unions a hard time today, particularly in Chicago. You should see, though, why. The claims keep changing. They keep moving the goalposts, telling us they need something other than what they already have. And then when they get the thing they're demanding to go back to in-person instruction, then there's another demand, right? The teachers' unions, it's like they're hostage takers. And every time they say, we'll release the hostages, just bring us a pizza, or, we'll release the hostages, just give us a bag of money. Sure enough, the Democrat politicians, Lori Lightfoot, the mayor of Chicago, show up, say, okay, here you go. And they go, yeah, no, not enough. We want more. We want more. And here's an example of that. CNN's Brianna Keilar, who is now a very serious journalist, I would have you add, which is kind of funny. But here she is talking to this member of I don't know if she's just a teacher, member of the teachers union, whatever. Watch.
Your union says that agreements were reached on some serious issues like health and safety protocols, ventilation, contact tracing, and safety committees. What is outstanding? What are your concerns that remain?
Well, my concerns that remain, the number one concern I have is that COVID is still spreading in Chicago.
So there's still COVID. I thought it was about testing. I thought it was about, this is what they told us. And this is what teachers unions and other places are still doing. They're doing it in New York City as well. They're doing it in major cities across the country. Oh, we need a better ventilation system. Oh, we need better testing. Oh, they keep moving this around. And then finally, because people are desperate because their children are in school, it's, well, actually, there's still COVID out there, so not going to in-person instruction. Well, I'm glad we're all running around trying to figure out how we could tend to every need of these corrupt and preposterous public sector unions for teachers across the country. Just ending on a happy note. Bring you a bit of sunshine, courtesy of the Sunshine State. Ron DeSantis, the actual hero of our political leadership class during COVID. Here's what he's saying about how things are going down there in Florida.
Florida also led and continues to lead on protecting the livelihoods of our people. While so many other states kept locking people down, Florida lifted people up. We believe every job is essential. You work in a restaurant, we have your back. If you are a hairstylist, we protect your right to earn a living. And if you are a parent, we ensure your kids have the right to attend school in person. Lockdowns do not work.
Lockdowns do not work. You're hearing it from a governor who's proven that statement is true. That's it for tonight's Hold the Line. The No Spin News with Mr. Bill O'Reilly is up next. Shields high.